the reason why he says that shame is so detrimental to a being is because it has an I am basis. We fill that I am with negative things, and then we identify ourselves with that. All right, what's up? Welcome back to The Cost of Curiosity. Let's go. I want to start off with. Did you see that? Thumbs up thing? That's cool. I want to start off with talking about what I'm curious about today, what I want to explore today. And that is my last episode. I'm curious how people received the idea of leaving shame behind. And I said something pretty bold. I was like, I'm no longer feeling shame. Like I no longer want that emotion to lead my life. And I'm curious if that was like an expansion view and you're like, amen, sister, like leave it behind. Or if your nervous system was a little nervous and instead was like, my faith is kind of built on the fact that shame kind of keeps me in obedience. It keeps me in alignment. And that's the idea that I want to explore. When I talk to a lot of people of different faiths, something that they say to me is that when they go to church or when they meet Christians, something that they feel is a sense of shame, right? And I just want to explore that idea. I want to explore how we got from a God who is so loving and merciful and full of grace to where now when people are in the presence of that God's followers, what they feel is shame. Just seems like something is off, and I want to explore that. So here we go. And I'm going to start with David Hawkins and his book, The Power versus Force. So this book changed my life. I was in a chiropractic seminar, and there was this amazing doctor who I still admire. If I just took a course from hers recently, and I recommend it to everyone, Dr. Devin Vrana and the Butterfly Effect. And the question that they asked her was like, what was the book that you just would recommend for anyone and everyone to read? And she said, Power versus Force. And I tried to find the audio book version of it because I was not a big reader back then. Like I could not get through an entire book to save my life, and I couldn't get through the audiobook version either. It was so wild. Like it did not click at all. And then I'm in my dad's library years later, and I'm just like sitting there talking to him, and in the corner of my eye something catches my eye, and I look over and it is Power versus Force by David Hawkins, and I'm like, no way, I have to read that book. And it changed my life. And one of the biggest things that he talks about is the map of consciousness. And what this is like a hierarchy of emotions, and how much these emotions, like when you're living in this state of emotion, how it kind of warps your view of life. And at the very bottom of this hierarchy is shame, and it vibrates at like 20. And then you get to a neutral, which is courage, and then an expansion, which at the most top is love, peace, joy, enlightenment, right? And the way that he describes it is expansion versus collapse. So we can almost feel it in our bodies, right? When we are coming from a place of love and joy, we are expansive and expressive, and our body physically gets strong. And that's how he tested this, was using muscle testing, which is not like the most science validated form of testing, but it's fascinating and deserves to be at least like conceptually thought about as an understanding of this kind of stuff. So you do muscle testing, and when you say things that invoke that joy, peace, love, you're physically, you go strong. and when you do things that instead create that guilt, shame, fear, anxiety, your muscles physically go weak. And so shame is at the very, very bottom of this consciousness hierarchy. And the reason why he says that shame is so detrimental to a being is because it has an I am basis. We fill that I am with negative things, and then we identify ourselves with that. So the worst is, right, I am bad or I am unworthy, right? How many times have we felt that I am unworthy and just saying those words? And so when you believe that identity about yourself, what it leads to is hiding. What it leads to is separation, and then it cycles through and continues that emotion over and over and over again. And shame is unique in the sense that it is a cycle. It's a cycle. And so what the cycle looks like is a trigger happens, and then you say the I am statement in your head, and then your body feels, right? It responds to that emotion and that trigger, and we contract, right? So our body physically feels threatened, and then we cope somehow, right? We cope through, like I mentioned earlier, hiding or performing or attacking back. And then we get a short sense of relief. Whew, escaped that thing. But then the emotion of shame comes back even deeper. And then it repeats itself. It repeats itself until we are a slave to shame. An easy example of this that is like we can all kind of resonate with is we send a vulnerable text. We send a, hey, love you, miss you, hope you're doing good, right? Kind of message to someone, and it is not well received. It's short, snippy response. And then, so that's the trigger. And then the I am statement is like, I am just too much, right? We believe that lie. That goes into the body feeling threatened, right? And we can get these spiraling thoughts going through our head that just go around into anxieties, all of these thoughts that just keep going and going and going, or even like my heart starts racing, right? Our physiology actually changes. And so we cope. We either explain ourselves, we over explain ourselves to try to control the situation, or we ignore them, right, to separate and hide ourselves from the situation. We do some type of coping mechanism that then eases that stress and eases that pressure, but only temporarily. And then it comes back. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. Look at all that stuff I just did because of I sent this message out, right? So we're reiterating that belief system again, and then it just cycles and cycles deeper and deeper and deeper. And so identifying where we are believing things about ourselves with those I am statements that are just simply not true is an area where I think we should spend a lot of time, especially in regards to actually healing and becoming whole. So that is shame. The next one is oh no, let's talk about that. So I talk about those I am statements. So every morning, because I've read this book and it just changed my view of everything, I like am leaving shame behind, right? I no longer want to say those things about myself. Instead, every morning I start with saying 3 really positive I am statements. And it's kind of goofy. I go outside, put my feet in the ground, and I take 3 big breaths in as I raise my arms over my head, and I say 3 things that I'm grateful for. And then I say 3 I am statements as I like bring all of my power back in. I'll show you later. It's fine. And I do this outside, and it looks goofy, and I don't care. But I say 3 things, right? I am loved. I am smart. I am a daughter of the king. Whatever. They can be whatever. Whatever things that I want to reiterate about myself that I want to believe rather than I am worthless, I am dumb, I am etc. So what's interesting, right, is that God's name for himself in the Bible, the way he identifies himself to Moses in Exodus is I am that I am. He is the source of all being. And so if you think about it, there is an idea of when I say I am invoking the creator of the universe into that space. And I would never say I am, my God is dumb, right? Is whatever. I would only say the most life-giving truths about my understanding of the creator. And I'm not saying that as in I think that I'm God. I do believe, however, that I am made in his image and a reflection of him, and can learn more about him by learning more about us and our physiology and the way that we work together as humans. But we will explore that in further episodes. But for today, just thinking of how I don't get to use God's language of I am to curse his creation, myself included. Right? So being very intentional with what is coming after the statement of I am, especially once we realize how much believing a lie can enslave us in shame. So the next one up top of shame is guilt. Now, guilt is a little bit different. Guilt vibrates at 30 rather than 20, but it's still a very negative emotion in regards to how your physiology responds to said emotion. The one difference about guilt is that it is not an identity issue. It is not an I am something. It is a I did something. Now it's more of a signal, right? It's I violated a value of my own, or I harmed myself or someone else, or I just acted out of integrity, right? And it gives us the opportunity. It gives us the opportunity to, one, either not acknowledge it and it goes into shame, right? It's a quick bounce right over to shame, and then that cycle continues. Or I can course correct. I can look at the situation differently, and I can choose a different outcome, and can change my mind, right? We talked about that in the previous episode. Repentance, metanoia. We can look at it differently and change our source of outcome. So that is guilt. And in my line of work, a similar analogy that I can think of that I think is just very useful to also share is I'm a doctor. I'm a chiropractor. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. And so I see a lot of people who come in with pain, right? And the way that I view pain is a lot different than most people view pain. The way that I view pain is a signal from the body saying, hey, something is not acting right. I need help, right? It's that same signal. And actually, same, Dr. Devin Vrana has an amazing acronym when it comes to pain, which is pay attention inside now. Pay attention inside now, right? Like, I am feeling pain. I have two options. One, I can ignore it. I can ignore it and I can tell my body to shut the heck up and we're going to keep moving, which then, if we were to correlate it, would be that same shame cycle, bouncing right back over to there and not correcting the problem. Or we can listen to our body and we can honor that pain is there for a reason, and we can lean in and see what's going on and course correct and do something different, right? And allow the body to heal. And so I think about that as the same way as guilt. It's not I've done something wrong. It's not leading into those emotions of I am, my identity is worthless, all of these things, but it's just simply, this doesn't sit right with my integrity, with my values. I'm feeling that emotion and it's leading me into doing something differently. We love that. We love that. So, so from this little study, when I'm researching and learning these things, each one of those emotions that we feel are a really good checking into something, right? So I don't want to say, and that's what I said last time in my last podcast that I wanted to clarify a little bit, was saying I don't feel shame and guilt. It's not that I don't feel shame and guilt. It's that I don't spend a lot of time there. I use it as the intentional tool that it is there for, and then I move on as a systems check, right? So, for example, when I feel fear, the point of fear is to check and see if I'm safe. If I am safe, then I don't need to have this fear, right? Anger is a check on, are my boundaries up? Do I have proper boundaries? Are they being crossed, right? Check, reevaluate. Sadness, what have I lost? Guilt is a check on integrity. And shame is a check on what is the lie that I'm believing. And I want to explore these emotions further in another episode of how those work. But but what I think is interesting and why I wanted to talk about this so much is because, like I mentioned in the very beginning, when I talk with my friends or when I talk with other people who have a different belief system than me, one of the very first things that they talk about is how the church or how Christians or how their perception of Christians lead them into feeling shame. And that breaks my heart because shame leads us into hiding, where the true love of Jesus does the opposite. It brings people closer to him. So if something that we are doing is invoking shame in people, then I think that we should take a moment to try to figure out where that's coming from. Like, what part of our message is misconstruing a God who's so loving, who's so good, that is invoking people to have these negative I am statements about themselves. Like, something's not adding up. And so I think that we should take the time to look at what we are saying and doing that is invoking that response, and kind of take some ownership of that. So a couple of questions, right? If we were to do an internal audit on trying to figure out where that's coming from without invoking shame and guilt in our own selves, right? Is looking at the source test, right? Is the way that we are acting, the way that we are doing and being, coming from love or coming from a fear of rejection, a rejection from God, or rejection from other Christians, rejection from whomever. I know that is a big one for me. It stopped me from speaking actually for a very long time. The next one is fruit test. What are these beliefs that we were believing or expressing? Like, what fruit is it producing? Is it producing delicious fruit? Then it's like, then that's where we need to lead into. Like, that's where we need to lean in and continue to have reproduce life-giving fruit versus sour fruit that's leading to these negative emotions. And then this one I thought was a really interesting one, is the relationship test. Like, what does my behavior say about what I believe about my creator? It actually makes me think of another David Hawkins book called Recovery and Healing that I was gifted by a patient of mine. And it talks about how those same emotions, those same consciousness levels that we were talking about, they create the paradigm in which we see God. Hear me out. So if fear, which is on the negative scale, it vibrates at like 100. If we are living in fear as the base motive of the base emotion of our life, then the way that we see God is a punitive God that invokes fear, right? We see a God who punishes us for doing things wrong, that comes over the top and is going to keep us in hell to torture forever, right? And you see how that same version of God, that belief system, is almost impossible to have if instead we were vibrating from love and joy. Like, I'm not saying I'm there yet. I'm more at like an acceptance range. But when you view God, creator God, whatever that looks like for you from that vibration, it doesn't make sense. You can't imagine a God that would torture you forever. Again, we'll talk about it in another episode. But just something to think about, just something to do an internal audit to try to figure out where what emotion controls your life. Like what emotion are you vibrating at for most of your life? And you can muscle test to figure that out. I did it and it was so much fun, and I learned a lot about myself by doing it. And if you're curious, hit me up. But I want to get back to shame, and I think the most important part of that is identifying, like I mentioned earlier, identifying the lie that we are believing. We already all know how powerful our words are. In the 4 agreements, right? Be impeccable with your words. Even in the Bible, it says, what does it say? The power of your tongue. Let's just look it up. I think it's Proverbs. The tongue can bring life or death. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Proverbs 18:21. It was really close. So realizing that what we believe starts with what we say, and vice versa, and they greatly impact each other. So if we can identify what we are saying over ourselves and get out of the I am statements that lead to shame and guilt and fear and anxiety, and instead vibrate at a much higher level, then that is the starting point for healing, is believing that you are worthy and you are loved. And so I challenge you guys to do that, right? I say it every morning, and I genuinely am starting to believe them about ourselves. And also remembering that so are your neighbors. So are the people that look different than you, or in a different economic class, or voted in a different way. They are still loved. They are still smart, and they are still sons and daughters of the King.